Okay, good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get the meeting started. This is our call to order for the Board of Education meeting here at Community Consolidated School District 46, Wednesday, November 6th, 2024, beginning here at 6 p.m. I need a call to order via a roll call, including our two student leaders this evening, please.
Mack.
Here.
Braden, absent. Nash.
Here.
Albert.
Here.
LaCroix, absent. Miller, absent. Weedman. Mayerson. Here. Rowe.
Here.
Thank you very much, and welcome to the board table this evening. That is our quorum. Please join me for the pledge. Okay, thank you. I need a motion to approve this evening's agenda.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay?
Mack.
Yes.
Albert.
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye.
And Nash.
Aye.
Okay, great. That approves the agenda. Do we have any public comments signed up for this evening? Dr. Wolk? Okay. That brings us to the presentation this evening, which is the Park Campus Leader of the Pack Group. Welcome to our board meeting. I look forward to hearing from you.
Hello, and thank you for allowing us to come to your meeting tonight. My name is Jennifer Voss. I'm the Dean of Students at Park Campus, along with the leader of the PAC advisor. We'd like to say thank you to the Board of Education, Dr. Glickman, Mrs. Gluck, and the D46 staff and community. Thank you for allowing us to take some time to introduce our leader of the PAC group.
Leader of the Pack is 7th and 8th grade students that helps with activities around school. It is a commitment to the school and our community.
Leader of the Pack students have an application process. This year, students had to fill out a questionnaire about respect, responsibility, and safety, which are the 3 pillars at Park Campus. Students selected 2 former teachers to rate themselves on these pillars and how the student performs in the classroom. Students were selected based on this criteria.
As the leader of the Pack for Park School, we aim to help create fun opportunities for all our community, including our school. By hosting our events, we help bring together all of our community and bring a sense of familiarity. Also, by doing this, we bring a student voice and different perspectives.
Some accomplishments from this past year include the fall food truck, spirit days, and pop print orders. We have several upcoming ways to help at Park School, for example, BBIS lessons, filling pop print orders, and reinforced school education.
This year, District 46 has launched the No Place for Hate campaign, and we are excited to be a part of it as leaders of the pack. Signing the pledge. Our first activity involved signing a pledge that reflects the 6 core values of respect, inclusion, and understanding. This pledge serves as a commitment to fostering a positive and inclusive school environment. Creating handprints. We also created handprints, with each finger representing our unique strengths and quality. These handprints are proudly displayed in every classroom as a daily reminder that we are no place for a hate school. Upcoming activities in January. In January, the leaders of the pack will assist teachers in reading stories that celebrate diversity. We will engage students in activities that complete these stories, further promoting awareness and appreciation from all backgrounds. On the next slide, you will see various creative ways our teachers have taught the pledge and displayed our handprints. The No Place for Hate campaign is an important initiative that aligns with our mission to create a supportive and inclusive environment at Park School. Together, we can make a difference.
Through the Leader of the Pack program, we not only develop our leadership skills, but also become important members of the park community. This experience reinforces the importance of respect, responsibility, and safety in all that we do.
We would like to thank the Board of Education, Dr. Glickman, Ms. Gluck, Mr. Malamed, Mrs. Morales, and the D46 community for allowing this time to introduce ourselves and
and give the opportunity to speak about what makes Park Campus such a wonderful place to be.
Thank you, everybody. If you have any questions, our group is happy to answer any.
That's wonderful. I'll open the questions to the board. My colleagues, any questions? Mrs. Nash?
That was so cool. Thank you, guys. Great job. I was curious because I'm such a foodie. With regards to the food trucks, was the selection, identification of the food trucks a part of the diversity initiative as well? Did you have variations in the food offerings?
Well, this time around, it was coordinated with our PTO. So they went out to the community to find different food truck vendors that would like to come to our school, and a percentage of their sales then went back to our PTO. The Leader of the Pack students were there to help run some of the mini games, some of the little fake tattoos that our little kids like, and we're just there to support and help in any way. So they played a role in the behind the scenes.
Gotcha. Awesome. Great job, guys.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Oops, turned it off. First, you had me at the donut slide, but second, for yourselves, what do you think the best experience out of this was throughout the year?
I definitely think it's the new opportunities for me and getting to see our community and new faces everywhere.
Getting to help the younger kids, whether it's reading books to teach them stuff.
We're a shy bunch.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but thank you very much for the leadership that you're doing. It's critically important that we have young leaders, and it's great to always hear your story. Thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, that brings us to the section here of our board reports. Again, I am welcoming Sammy Mayerson and Michaela Rowe to the board table this evening. So at this point, each of us go through, any stories or comments that we have, if we have any, and you're welcome to share anything additional if you wish when you're sitting at the table. You don't have to, but you're welcome to do so if you'd like to. I'll start down on this end this evening with Mr. Weidman.
I don't have anything to report. Thank you.
And I do not have a report this evening.
I do not have a board report this evening.
So please hold us in suspense for your.
I had the pleasure of attending some recent choir and band concerts, and I just want to thank the parents, the students, staff, and especially the principals for being in attendance at those events. And I appreciate our strong music program that we have here in our district.
And is it Sammy that's first, Mrs. Mayerson, or Mrs. Rowe?
I'm excited to share some wonderful updates about what's happening in our K through 4th classrooms, where our teachers and students are working hard to build a strong foundation of learning, respect, and community. As we approach Veterans Day, our students are preparing for a special assembly where they'll have the honor of greeting our veterans with 2 songs. This event is not only an opportunity to show our gratitude to those who have served, but also a way to bring our school community together and a meaningful celebration of service and sacrifice. In the classroom, our first graders are diving into the exciting world of science. They've been exploring different items and conducting experiments as they learn about the scientific method. Finally, I'm proud to announce that all of our K through 8 classes have signed the No Place for Hate pledge. This pledge is a commitment to creating a safe, inclusive, and respectful environment for everyone.
I'd like to take a moment to share some exciting updates from our 5th through 8th grade advisory time, where our teachers are making great strides in helping students build strong classroom connections and fostering an environment of growth, learning, and community. Our 7th graders recently had a hands-on science experiment where they made slime as part of their study of chemical reactions. This was a fun and engaging activity. Our 8th graders had a fantastic opportunity to explore real-world career options at the Navigate Career Fair. This event focused on the trades and hands-on jobs, allowing students to learn about careers like carpentry, electrical work, automotive technology, and more. It was a great way for 8th graders to see how the skills they're developing in school directly connect to the future career opportunities.
Excellent. Thank you both very much. Thank you, fellow board members. That brings us to the superintendent's report. Dr. Glickman.
Thank you, Dr. Mack. I, too, want to welcome our student members to the table, and I want to comment that it's really exciting and fun to see what happens from one year to the next, because last year was our first year of doing this, and I think there was kind of that feeling of what's this really going to be, and now you're like, well, I'm just going to be a board member. Like, you just kind of get it, and that's really exciting. Board, I had the opportunity to meet with these park students last week. We went, I got a chance to talk with them a little bit about their presentation, so I knew what they were going to be doing, and we talked about this board meeting. We talked about the agenda a little bit, and so student board members, I want to remind you that we talked about a little bit later in this meeting, we will be doing an update about our Media Center Core Planning Group, where we're talking about the changes that we want to put into place for our media centers, also sometimes known as libraries. And I told you that that might be a great place for you to jump in, because you're going to see these ideas. We'd love to hear what you think of them. Students that are in the audience, just like the beginning of this meeting, there was a public comment time. There'll also be a public comment time at the end. So if you also have comments that you want to share, you'd be welcome to do that at the end of the meeting. Okay. I'm going to hand this over next to Mrs. Gluck, who's going to talk with us about our summative designations that have come out recently, and also some updates regarding our parent-teacher conferences.
Thanks. Good evening. So first I'm going to talk about our summative designations that are part of the Illinois School Report Card. Those came out last week. And I just want to remind you that there's different criteria that leads into those designations. And so that includes ELA and math proficiency, science proficiency, student growth, chronic absenteeism, and English learner path to proficiency. So all of that leads into it, and I'm happy to share that we have 2 schools that are exemplary, both Meadowview and Park East. Remember, Park is broken into Park East and Park West. So that's the K-4 portion of Park. And then we have 6 schools that are commendable. So Avon, Frederick, GMS, Park West, Prairie View, and Woodview. So great summative designations for all of our schools. So we're excited about that. And then I also just want to talk quickly about parent-teacher conferences, which are coming up. Sign-ups should have gone out for all of the schools, so if you still have children in the schools, you should have received those. And then those are on November 25th and 26th. They're after school on the 25th from 3:30 to 6. And then on the 26th, they're from also after school. We have a half day of school for our students, and they're from 1 to 8 on that Tuesday. So we have both virtual and in-person options again. So allowing our parents and families to be able to utilize either option. Any questions? All right, thanks.
Thank you. And one other comment about those summative designations. Board, as you know, those are based on student achievement data. And on January 15th, Mrs. Gluck will do a data review for you, where she's going to talk about student achievement data and student growth data. So we'll be looking at our academic data as a board team in early January, mid-January. The other update I wanted to share is just letting you know, board, about some professional conferences and professional development that members of our cabinet team have been able to participate in recently. We've just had a lot of people out and about, both gaining their own professional development and providing professional development. So just wanted to highlight a few of those. Recently, our two interim directors of O&M and I all were a part of the Midwest Facility Masters Conference. I mentioned that to you at the last board meeting because we were honored with an award, the Recovery of the Year, for the work that our school district did on recovering from what happened last year at GMS. And actually, we will be sharing more information about that at our next board meeting. But we were all there for that, as well as Mr. Gonke was presenting. He did two presentations, and that was to facilities directors as well as CSBOs that come from Illinois and Minnesota and Wisconsin. So it was really nice to see that they were doing that work and sharing it out with people around them. I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Woke about some work he's done recently.
Yes, thank you. In mid-October, I was in Seattle for the American Association for School Personnel Administrators, AASPA. And it was a national conference for HR people like me. And, excuse me, a lot of takeaways, continued to work on refining skills with investigations. It's very interesting to hear the different lawyers from across the country speak, because some states have unions, some do not have unions. And so it's just interesting to get different perspectives from them. Are we sitting or standing?
You're sitting. They seem to be standing. It's all right. All is right with the world. Keep going. Keep going. It's all good.
The biggest takeaway was from that conference was a lot of work with AI and how different departments are using, HR departments are using artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, Google Gemini. Learned a whole bunch more, but not ones that I've used yet, and how they're utilizing it within their daily work to letters, schedules, all kinds of stuff. And then earlier today, I presented for our state organization, IASPA, Illinois Association, a presentation that I put together last year for our national conference with Gary Hyam, who is in charge of student teaching placements at Illinois State University, and talking about the work that we've done together and how many student teachers we've been able to place from ISU, 25 over the past 4 years. 80 students have been placed for student teaching or internships, clinical hours, and then also the work we've done with District 127 and bringing their students into internships and clinical hours.
Thank you. Dr. Lorenzo.
Hi, only cool people stand, so I'm just saying. No, we don't have microphones, so we chose to stand.
It's a good problem solving on your part. Yes.
There we go. I attended the IAASE, which is the special education version of our statewide organization, similar to IPA and what Dr. Woke spoke to for his travels today. Our entire conference is really made up of a lot of legal language and updates and practice and steering people in strong legal decision making. We did have the state superintendent join us, and he shared some really nice updates about what's coming with assessments and outcomes and things like that. So more to come there, I'm hoping for. And then learned all about due process cases and how our hearing officers are mitigating and ruling on cases that have come up, and all the things legal and decision making with students with special education services. So, and then lastly, on the last day of our conference, we have a legal panel. So there's always some post question, and several attorneys across the state give kind of their perspective to inform administrators like me on how to solve problems and make decisions regarding students and the services they receive. Any questions? Perfect.
Oh,
yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Dr. Lorenzo. Curious if there were any discussions of like emerging risk or things that we need to kind of be aware of or planning for?
Yes and no. They really are just kind of reviewing more case law to help administrators like me use case law as a foundation to make decisions, to avoid further case law. There are some snippets on things that are coming. We learned some things from our state superintendent, but we also learned there were some sessions about cyclical monitoring from ISB. So they're going to be coming and taking a look at each district across the state in a cyclical process to evaluate and audit our work. But other than that, that temperature kind of stayed low for now, and more to come, I guess. So, our next one's in February, so I'll let you know if that has changed.
I appreciate that language of learning case law to avoid future case law. It's a great way to put
always
it.
the goal.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Mrs. Pelser.
All right, so I was lucky enough to get to attend 2 quarterly workshops for the Illinois Education Technology Leaders, IEDL. I helped organize the first one to learn more about project management and find ways to improve, because we do lots of projects in the technology department. And the one that I just attended last week was about anonymous threats. So when school districts hear things and are threatened through social media or phone calls or things like that, the best way to handle it and work with officials to get a good outcome.
Thank you. And then finally, I'll just mention Dr. Diaz is not able to be with us this evening, but she recently attended the Multilingual Directors Conference. And so, board, we are constantly busy sharpening the saw, as they say, right? Learning more about our craft, learning about continuing investments out there in the world of education, and we'll continue to do so. And this is a perfect time to remind everyone that in just a few short weeks, we'll be together at the Triple I Conference, a number of cabinet members and our board, learning about many things in the world of education with people throughout the state of Illinois coming together. So we're looking forward to that. And that is it for the superintendent's report tonight.
Thank you, everybody, for those wonderful updates. The consent agenda, I need a motion to approve this evening's consent agenda, which includes the personnel addendum that was sent to us earlier today.
I'll move.
Second.
Okay.
Nash,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We do have a couple of action items this evening, or let's see, a few. The first one is the press policy updates. I need a motion to approve the press policy updates 115. Am I doing each of these separately?
No, but there's one that we want to pull out and talk about.
Yes. Do we want to just do that first?
Sure.
Let's do that first.
Okay.
That was for
All right, so
7-0, right?
ready for discussion? Yeah, it's good?
Yeah.
Okay. So there was one policy revision that the board wanted to discuss at this board meeting, and so I promised that we would set that aside to make sure there was time for that this evening, and that was policy 430, which included not changes that were directly related to press updating the policy, but instead conversations that had previously happened at this board table and another local board table. So I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Wildman to explain about the changes that have been recommended to policy 430.
Yes, so 430, revenue investments, everything has stayed the same as per press, with the additional sections which District 127 has already actually board approved. They came out of the conversations from the Finance Committee and several of the conversations which the board had had with the village in terms of the negotiations in supporting the village with its efforts to support property tax, supporting property tax, bringing the more businesses to the area. So that was drafted by Robin Schwartz. It was presented at policy, and it is now for discussion today.
So I think the question is, does the board have any questions about those changes to the policy? If not, you can vote on them. But at the last meeting, it was thought that the board might want to talk about it a little bit.
Right. Yeah, Mrs. Albert?
I guess I wasn't in attendance at that policy meeting, and I just wanted to learn more about where it came from, because I did attend finance committee meetings and prior policy committee meetings, and I don't really feel like our board talked about it much before the last meeting. I mean, I guess you said Robin Schwartz wrote this.
So this is on that the taxing bodies groups where we all sent the representative, which I was sitting on with the village. This is language that has kind of come out of that, and those discussions that we've had at the board regarding how we would do it, how we would support that group, and how we would decide then if we're going to participate in any type of abatement to entice taxing or entice new revenue coming into the village. So, you know, let's say another FedEx comes into town somewhere, you know, in our district, right? Our ability, this language helps us, gives us that ability to make those abatements going forward. Doesn't say we have to, it just says we have the ability to do it. So it'll be kind of on a case-by-case basis. So Chris worked with the District 127 CSBO, and their lawyer drew this up, and that's what this language is.
So the language of tax inducements in this draft is really about tax abatements and helping attract businesses? Okay.
Yeah, yes, one of the things that, that is attractive about this is that it's non-committal. It doesn't actually state that the district is going to do anything apart from what is already understated in Illinois School Code. So it's just reiterating our current commitments, and it's done in a way with a commitment at the beginning to state that we will work in collaboration with 127 and the village, that we'll all make decisions together.
Because you remember in the beginning, they wanted us to have kind of set a number of how much we would give. This doesn't do that. It gives us the ability to kind of look at the project itself and decide if it's worth our participating in and what the impact is to the district.
And it can go case by case, so if we choose to vote on one, that doesn't automatically, it's non-committed, it's, as I'm reading it correctly, right, it's non-precedential.
Right.
It's non-precedential, okay.
Yeah, and it allows us to make it so it fits our needs. Whereas before they were negotiating on our behalf. This makes us the sole decision maker for our own taxing body.
Yeah, I think that was our biggest hang-up, right? That we wanted to make sure that we had a voice and a seat at the table in the decision-making. So it sounds like it's a little bit more prescriptive for our needs, right? Not really taking stuff out, but just adding to make sure we are protected, that we have a seat at the table. We can use our voice to yay or nay,
Right.
whatever incentives the village is looking to put out.
And it also helps us in future boards by having it actually in a policy. So it's setting the table for other boards to make those, they have the power to make those decisions, whereas really, they probably didn't have some of that power before.
And 127 has, it's the identity, it's, that was right, okay. Okay.
Exactly the
So there's
same and already adopted, yes.
Yep. I'll leave it open for any additional comments. Mr. LaCroix?
So I think the question is, board, because I think you're about to vote for all of these policies at one time, are you comfortable leaving that policy revision in this bank of policies that you're approving at one time? Is that something you're comfortable doing? Yes?
I feel like I need to think about this one a little bit more. I just don't have the questions, I guess. I hesitate because I don't know that it's, I understand all the reasoning given, I just don't know that it's in interest of education to be recruiting businesses into the community. We do service multiple communities. Is this something that,
As far as recruiting businesses into the community, it's always in our best interest and it's actually in the residents' interest to have non-student producing businesses or properties come into town that produce tax dollars to come into the coffers, because then it spreads the, lack of a better word, paying of the taxes through a bigger pool of people without adding a burden into the school district of, and burden's the wrong word, but adding kids into the school district, right? If they took that same land and they added, let's say they added 300 homes into that same land where this business might go, you're looking at anywhere, on an average house, you're looking at between 1.5 to 2.5 kids per house. So you're looking at 600 roughly kids coming into the school district at some point. That creates revenue problems for us because you don't get the tax dollars for those houses don't necessarily cover everything. Whereas you could, for that same area, if you put a building in it like FedEx, right, and if it's in the right type of area, I'm not saying you're going to plop one down at 83 and 120, right? That student producing tax base helps spread the paying of the tax dollars over a bigger assessment without causing more students to come into the district, to have to educate, to have to add on to the schools, to have to add teachers, to have to add all the special services that have to go along with them. It's not free money, but it's money coming in that has a positive impact for us. And if you can take, here would be an example, if let's say the building produces $10,000 in taxes, right? Just as a round number. If we were to abate 50% of that for 5 years, we would still get an extra $5,000 for the first 5 years, and then after that, you would get the whole $10,000. We wouldn't lose anything. We'd gain still a little bit, but then in the long run, we would gain more because we entice that business to come in that'll pay taxes into the school district without providing children. And that's kind of the way they're looking at this for their developments. Honestly, with the Village of Grays Lake, what's left in the Village of Grays Lake to build is so minute, it doesn't matter where they put anything, it's not really gonna help our district, because it's all residential as it is. Everything else that's left in the village to really build is down south, or the fairgrounds, which is in District 50. So very little is gonna make very little impact. Even this policy is gonna make very little impact. It just gives us a door to negotiate to help them bring something in if that's possible.
do we have a history or do we know what sort of data is out there about abatements? Has it really helped our district in the past for any businesses that have?
So we abated property taxes for our portion of FedEx at one point. And that was for X amount of years. I don't remember the time frame. So that building of FedEx coming in, that's going to pay property taxes far beyond the time frame that we abated some taxes. We didn't abate it all. We just abated a portion of it. The big difference between this and a TIF district, which is the tax increment financing district like we had up at Rounds in 83 with Kmart and Walmart and Zare and everything else that was up there, that was all in a tax increment finance district, which meant that property tax for that building that land was frozen at that farmland, right? Because that's what it was beforehand, at farmland levels for 30 years. Okay? It never grew anything. This type of language doesn't prevent it from growing on top of that. And then what happened is Walmart closed up shop and they moved down the road into somebody else's district. Kmart closed up shop, left. It's a tax break for them by doing that. The Village of Grays Lake has been really good about not bringing any TIF districts in because they know that that's detrimental to not only to the town, but to the taxing bodies. That, I don't have raw data. Those are just scenarios that have happened in this school district before.
Matt Taylor presented to us, I think, 18 months ago, and he made a presentation stating all the different developments which had come in through all the different abatements that the village had negotiated. Now, a lot of them were not in our district. So he talked about Medline, which is not in our constituency, but he did mention those in his presentation. So the village is the one that keeps the data. To answer your question, we don't keep track of abatements. And since I've been here, I haven't brought any abatements to you. So you can kind of gauge that from a data point about how often we're doing this. I think it's low risk because when I was working with 127 and Robin
You said
Schwartz.
low risk, right?
Low risk,
Okay.
low risk.
Not a
yes,
little risk,
low,
low risk. Let me make sure
so
you
low risk.
Low risk.
Because this doesn't commit us to anything. It memorializes the current process. And one of the things that 127 wants to do, they're waiting for us to do this. They want to do a joint press release and present this to the village to actually say, this is what we've done and we're together in this. So when we finally decide what we're doing, if we're in the same, if we agree, we will do a joint press release and present this to the village. So the village is the one that keeps the data. I don't think it's something which is, I'm not seeing a lot of it, and it demonstrates a commitment, as Jim already stated, in our board policy that we think it's important, and we've memorialized it in board policy moving forward.
What do you mean when you say this is what we've done? You just mean memorializing it in policy?
I mean, stating that this is our commitment to a process which we have committed in full good faith to send you of all, several of you have attended, and that we are responding to the village by saying, we believe that this is important, we're all involved in this, and that we have a process to be able to respond to the village in bringing these to us. And as it states at least twice, the approval or rejection of any given proposal shall be non-precedential, not presidential, precedential. I'll get that word right.
So the question remains, are we comfortable voting with that policy in the bucket? I'm comfortable with it. It doesn't bind us to anything, and it allows us to make a case-by-case decision. So I'm comfortable with voting on, with that policy in the slate of policies to be voted on.
Okay, I will restate my motion then. Need a motion to approve the policy updates this evening that include all of the policies listed in this evening's agenda, both for 115, 116, the exhibits, the 5-year review, and the policy revisions.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay.
Weedman,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
and LaCroy. Oh, LaCroy, sorry.
Aye.
And Albert.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. The next action item this evening is I need a motion to approve the intergovernmental cooperation agreement for mutual assistance in response to crises in the public schools of Lake County, Illinois, as it was presented to us. I'll second that one. Okay.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and Nash.
Okay, motion carries. And the final action item, need a motion to approve the revised board meeting calendar as we had discussed with some changes later in the year.
So moved. Oh.
Go ahead, I'll second.
Okay.
Albert,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. We do not have any unfinished business this evening to discuss, so that moves us directly to new business. First item up is the Media Center Core Planning Group update.
So Board, I'm happy to introduce you to Matt Verdon, who has lots of great information to share with us.
This is just an update on where we're at with the core planning group process.
Is your mic on?
How about now? There we go. So an update, this is just basically a reminder of what the core planning group is and what it does. It's basically a group that's made up of the constituents looking at the topic. In this case, it was the media center. So we had a group that was made up of administrators, staff, a couple parents that all got together. We were focused on really big picture stuff, not specific building solutions. We had 27 members. Like I said, looking at some big picture stuff, we were really focused on the development of guiding principles and design criteria. These are the statements that are going to really guide us as we start to apply them then to every building. Like I mentioned, the guiding principles, they are more subjective. They are intended to be sort of big picture, pie in the sky sort of stuff that's graded more on a scale, not on a yes or no basis. And the design criteria is the more objective, solid, it either is or it isn't in the design. So just real quick, these are the guiding principles that we developed. This is, again, that subjective stuff. So media centers should act as the hub of the buildings, should be alive, welcoming, inviting spaces, allow for wonder and awe. I won't read through all of those, but they are very achievable goals and great stuff for us to be working towards. We then get to the design criteria, which again, this is the more objective stuff. They are I'll highlight, there's several pages of this, so I'll let you read through it, but I'll highlight some of the common themes that went through this. They included consistency amongst the buildings based on grade level, making sure that we got flexibility in spaces in both their use and their function. We also wanted to spend a lot of time talking about media centers, maker spaces, and STEM labs, and how those are adjacent to each other, how they connect to each other, how they're used, making sure that they're age appropriate for each of the buildings. We talked about storage and how that needs to be addressed in each space and how there needs to be dedicated storage for each different type of function. How do we secure that storage when it's used by outside groups? We talked about K4 story areas and how those get used. Where do they need to occur? How can they be multi-function spaces from a presentation to a story space to a student space? We talked about different group settings, large groups for staff meetings, small groups for one-on-one student use, and smaller group use. And we talked about security and how to secure those spaces. So a lot of information that's in there. We then decided to go on tours of several different buildings so that the members of the group could see this stuff in practice and in use. We went through 6 different buildings at 3 different districts. We spent a lot of time looking at how those adjacencies feel. We looked at how these parts that make up a media center, how do they interact with each other? How are they valuable to those districts? How were they used in those spaces? We saw a lot of spaces that weren't utilized the way that they were intended, which happens. It's not an uncommon thing. And we heard from the people that use those spaces, the media center specialists, the teachers, a few students, talking about what they liked, what they didn't like, if they could do it again, what would they do differently, that sort of stuff. And then we came back and applied that to kind of this adjacency diagram. And this is really kind of what we use as designers to then apply this to your different buildings. So some of the stuff that came out of the core planning group, has this got a pointer on it? It does. So like I said, the STEM room and the makerspace and how those are adjacent to the media center. Some of the stuff that came out of it was that the STEM space is really used at your upper grade levels. You have a STEM lab that's part of your curriculum. So we don't need to incorporate a STEM lab necessarily into the K4 environment quite yet. But where we do have those spaces, they want to be close to the makerspace, not necessarily connected to. If we can make it connected, great, but we're not going to go out of our way to go crazy with it. The real adjacency key is the makerspace to the media or to the media center. That dashed line is really about a transparency in that connection, whether that's a glass operable wall, something that's going to allow for oversight. It's going to allow it to be opened up to bigger spaces, give you that flexibility so you can have some large group space. We also talked about small group rooms. It would be critical that for each one of the buildings, that they have a small group room that could double as kind of a broadcast editing sort of space. It's got a green wall so that they can do some video work, have some podcasting, that sort of stuff, but still have an adjacency to the makerspace where that technology kind of feel happens, right? For a large group, we wanted to have that more off of the main entrance to the library or to the media center to make sure that there's, you know, foot traffic in and out during those large group settings isn't too disruptive to everything else. Some buildings, depending on size, may have a second small group room. It kind of depends on the building and the occupancy for it. One of the things that was kind of interesting was the circulation desk and its proximity. You think of, you walk into the media center, you've got that circulation desk. It's kind of like the gatekeeper position, right? The feedback we got from the group was that that probably doesn't need to be right at the main entry. It could be, with the way that everything's mobile, it doesn't necessarily even need to be a fixed position. It could be on mobile furniture. It could be something that the media center specialist could take that and move to wherever that function is within the space throughout the course of the day. The real key is the workroom, which doesn't need that proximity to the circulation desk either, but it does want to be adjacent to where the stacks and the book collection are. We want to make sure that a lot of activity in that workroom is based on book repair and things like that, so it's close to where those stacks happen. And then the storage space down here kind of wants to be off in a corner, so it gets a little bit of a seclusion, or a secluded feel, and it also can kind of create maybe a little half wall or something in the back that you could get a little bit of privacy so that the audience is facing the speaker and not distracted by what's going on behind them in the bigger media center, and also kind of create a feel for some individual student time if it's got like a little work counter or something there, kind of a Genius bar setup. So what we do is we take this and we apply this then to each of the buildings once we get into the design process, which is really kind of our next step. So right now, like I said, we've finished up the core planning group process here, giving the board update tonight. Our next steps over the next few months or couple months here as we get into the holiday season is going to be to work with the administrators to make sure that that design criteria and the plans really align with any other planning efforts that are going on at the administrative level. We want to find then synergies with the long-range facility plan scope that we've got that's developed, and make sure that as projects are developed, we're not doing work just on do it next summer or touch it next summer. We want to make sure there's some synergy there. So actually building cohesive projects between not just the media center effort, but also with some of the building maintenance stuff that we've got lined up as well. We'll develop then schedules for that, of how to implement it, put budgets to it, get that aligned with the funding from the bond sale, and then we'll come back and give you guys an update again. With the next step then after the first of the year, when the groups get back from the holidays, everybody's recharged and ready to go, we can start to get into the user group process, and that's where we'll reconvene some smaller groups of people that are on a building specific level. So we'll meet with people that use that building on a day-to-day basis, get to understand how do we apply that diagram to that building to find the solution that's appropriate for them. So it may not be the same in every building. We don't want to go crazy, but we got to make it work within the confines of the space they have. And really get into the nitty-gritty detail of, we need outlets here for this thing, we need the light switch on this wall, displays on this wall, that sort of stuff, and really get into the finer detail of how do we develop that. We then spend the next few months in the spring and the summer getting the construction documents, getting everything ready to go, get it out to bid in the early fall, like August-ish, somewhere around there, depends on the size and the scope of the project, and get it ready to be awarded and queued up for summer construction in '26. Any questions on any of that? It's a lot of info.
A lot of info.
Or comments. Comments work too.
Yeah.
I'm curious if any of our students at the table have any comments or questions. No pressure, but this would be the
She just threw you
time.
under the bus.
I totally did. Anything you were thinking about? You have a pretty great library at Park already, but we're looking to make even some improvements. So what do you have?
If we were to like do the construction bit, like how would you need to like expand the space, or how would you plan on doing this?
It's a good question. Depends on how we apply that stuff and how much of it goes in there. And it probably depends on the building that we're in. I think one of the interesting bits of feedback that we got on the tours, you think of the media center as kind of this destination, it's a room within the building, but you can take the walls away from that and make it more of a passive space. This is actually kind of a good example of a passive space right outside where the hallway sort of passes through there. So we can look at ways as, without necessarily taking over educational space that's around it, to still expand it without, you know, losing those other functions. One of the things that we saw on the tour was that kind of is dependent on the grade level that you're in. So the feedback that the group got was that in some of the buildings that we had that were K-4, it worked well because the students are usually teacher-led. They're, all right, let's get in line and go to the next space. Whereas at the middle school level, where students are a little bit more of a free-for-all in passing periods, it got a little noisy and a little congested, and it was distracting to the students in the other spaces. So I think finding the right application of that and ways to expand that is going to be the challenge that we're faced with the group as part of that next step.
And I'm curious, before I ask this question to you, Dr. Mack, do any of our students who are sitting in the audience have anything you wanted to say? Because, no, okay, because I didn't know if you wanted to have, okay. And I just, oh, we have another one, wonderful.
Okay, so how, in Frederick, like, it's like an open space,
Okay.
would that, like, be achievable, like, at our school? Because, like, I like the hallways kind of like a confined space, and, like, I feel like it just make it, like, more, like, busy.
Yeah, that's, like I said, that's one of the challenges, and that's, I think, really comes down to what your principals and your administration, how they want to see that, you know, implemented, and how well they think they can control that. Because at the middle school level, it does get a little bit more rambunctious, right? You guys have more freedom as students, and that's great, but it also can be disrupting to the other students that are in that environment. So I think we got to find the right balance of that and make sure that that's the right fit.
Yeah. And students, we will be finding ways to include some student voice in this discussion, just so you know. As we are getting closer to making decisions, we will find some ways to include some opinions from our students. I also just want to mention that this is a really outstanding opportunity to see how this particular field works. So Mr. Verdon is a part of our architect and engineering firm that we work with. So you've just gotten a chance to see how they work with a group of people to find out what it is we want, to then decide how to move forward. So it would be really easy for them to come look around and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to fix this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, but that's not how schools work very often. And typically, I think architect and engineering firms know that they have to work with the client. We, as a community, are the client, and you're all doing such a great job working with us. So what I do have a timing question. Can you go back a slide for a second, Matt? Okay, so from this slide, I am understanding that you are intending to be ready to update the board in December. Is that correct?
Sometime this summer, maybe early January. Yeah, I think
Okay.
we want to get those plans put together of how we're going to implement all of this and the
Okay.
timing of it all, and that's when we'll come back.
So as it turns out, we only have one board meeting in December,
That's why I
so
was hesitant to say
we have
yes.
one in December, we have one in January, so I'm going to assume we're doing it in January?
Probably January, yeah.
All right, great, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Anything else?
Okay, thank you.
Alrighty,
Thank you very much. All right, our next item of new business this evening is a review or circling back to the IASB resolutions. Am I passing that to you, Ms. Albert?
Yeah. So as you know, we have received the Resolutions Committee report at the end of September, early October. And we discuss what our board's direction is to give to the delegate this year. And I had sent a shorter document for you to peruse, to look at what the different resolutions are and how, and think about your vote, I suppose. So the first thing that we need to talk about is the proposed IASB constitutional amendment. It's basically about parliamentary practice. If you click on that resolutions committee report or the document I sent, it won't be on the consent agenda, it's completely separate. The delegates need to make 2/3 of the vote of all the delegates present in order to vote its adoption. The crossed out wording is the proposed deletion, and the underlined part is the proposed amendment to that IASB constitution. If you'd like, I can read it out loud, or if you want to have a chance to look at it more, or if you know what you're thinking already, I can record. It's just the very first thing. It's page 11.
Oh, yeah, that's okay.
It's the
yep,
IASB
yep,
constitutional amendment. Pretty straightforward. It's just saying.
I didn't have any issues with it.
Okay.
So just to clarify, they're not talking about like moving away from Robert's Rules of Order?
No, I think they just want more leeway in case they have another procedure to use. I feel like it must have been an issue in the past, and so that's why they're adding that. So, here's the rationale. In case there's a conflict between Robert's Rules of Order and the association's constitution or special rules, this way they can adopt rules and language even if it doesn't conform specifically to Robert's Rules of Order, is the way I understand it.
So it'll like specify, in this scenario we'll defer to Robert's Rules, in this scenario we'll defer to the association's constitution?
I think so,
Okay.
yeah. Anybody?
I don't-
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I think we can go with that.
So pretty much our board's vote is a yes? Okay. Okay, moving on. Now we're going to talk about the resolutions that were all recommended do adopt by the resolutions committee. They are all consent agenda items. If they are removed from the consent agenda on that day, they require a 2/3 vote. So we do need to know what our direction is that we're giving in case they're removed from the consent agenda. And if they are removed from the consent agenda, or any individual, any delegate can request that they remove them from the consent agenda. So if there is one that we find that we want removed from the consent agenda and discussed more, we can make sure that the delegate does that, in this case me. So the first one is dual language. Let's see. Basically, there are districts that have dual language programs, and by the time students are in high school, they already meet the biliteracy state seal. And this this resolution is suggesting that students don't have to take world language in high school if they've already met that criteria. And I don't know if there's anything else.
No, I don't know. The seal of biliteracy is a really important tool that high school students have access to. I personally do not think it should be in substitute of a world language classroom experience from not only a curriculum perspective as a language teacher, but also from the perspective of continued growth in language learning. Now, that could be also combined with a potential look on existing bilingualism within a family, right? Like if you have a student that is already bilingual that might not have room or space in their schedule for a world language classroom and gets caught up in however that works. But I would generally not support it supplanting world language learning.
Of this, but rather it just allows the flexibility, but it might have
Correct.
the unintended
I think so.
consequence of-
The unintended consequence might be everybody going for the seal of biliteracy.
Yeah, one thing that the resolutions committee mentioned was that, or the district that brought this proposal or resolution proposal was that there may be other courses that the students take in the high school that could be in those languages.
That's right, and it could be, and you could also have a student that comes in, mind you, the seal of biliteracy is not just that you know another language, you also have to have proficiency in English and the second language. So this could be a family, like, you could have, a family that has a second language at home, they come into the high school, they demonstrate proficiency via the SAT or the ACT or whatever, and pass the biliteracy exam that the state offers. I mean, I don't necessarily see an issue with it. I would not agree with this, so my opinion is a no on this, but I certainly will support the rest of the board. Whichever way you go.
Does anybody need more information or time?
Yeah, I think I'm just trying to really get at the essence of the issue here, because, so is it saying that in lieu of world language, like if you are already dual language, you get to like option out of a world language and still achieve biliteracy?
Actually, so it says the attainment of the Illinois State Seal of Biliteracy satisfies the Illinois World Language requirement for graduation. That's their statement. So it does seem like it's.
I mean, that would mean they would have to take it.
Yeah.
That's,
Right.
my understanding is, once a student has attained the seal of biliteracy, showing that in fact they are literate in 2 languages, they would not have to take a world language in order to meet that graduation requirement, correct?
Keep me honest, so oftentimes though, when you're taking, but for people who are already dual language, like when you're taking those courses, right, they count for world language.
Okay, right, so, but our students across the state who speak a language other than English at home, and then are going through a dual language program through their schooling, meaning they are learning both English and another language at the same time. They, depending on how the program is put together, might earn the seal of biliteracy, meaning that and then they wouldn't have to take another language. That's what that's saying.
Yeah, then I think I'm kind of like more of the mind of Dr. Mack, like you lose out on that.
They could,
Yeah.
but they wouldn't be required to,
Right.
because they already knew 2 languages.
And it doesn't indicate, they'd have to still do the biliteracy. It looks like they'd still have to attain the seal of biliteracy.
Correct.
Right now, it combines up as a dual credit type of opportunity as well, right? So, for example, if you take a dual credit Spanish class and you also pass the seal of biliteracy, you could get the dual credits for college from the Spanish class and an additional set of credits from the seal of biliteracy. So I don't know why you would want to take away one when a student could essentially double up on the dual credits that they could bring to a university with them, right? So you'd get 4 credits for college from a Spanish class, Plus, if you pass the sealed by literacy, you get an additional 3 or 4 credits in your pocket for college. If you use one to supplant the other, then you're effectively cutting off an additional opportunity for students to get more credits, and more credits coming out of high school into a college setting is more money in your pocket for tuition, right? So if you come out of high school with 8 credits instead of 4, that's a larger savings for your family or for yourself as tuition. So I guess I don't agree with the logic of it replacing anything. I mean, maybe it's an option here, but I wouldn't understand why it wouldn't be advocated for students to do potentially both. Why not? So for example, I have students who are in my dual credit French program who will get 4 credits coming out of that classroom and who are scheduled to take the sealed by literacy next month. If they pass it, they'll get double the amount of credits and they'll come out of school with more credits toward their college career if they choose to go that way. And in some cases, they can use some of those credits for vocational school as well. If they don't go the college route, but go a career route or a vocational route, they can use those credits in those areas as well, depending on what they go to. It just seems like there's more benefit to have more than less.
Do you want me to read the rationale that was in here
Yeah.
from the district? So
I have it here too, yeah.
Yeah, the submitting district rationale is, it's coming from U46. It says U46 has a large dual language program in grades K through 12. By high school, many dual language students are bilingual and biliterate. While they may not take a world language course in high school, they may take other academic courses in Spanish, including civics, AP US history, psychology, algebra 1, geometry, and others. In 2024, 289 of U46's recent graduates earned the Illinois State Sealed by Literacy.
And are those academic courses in the language then?
Yes. Yes.
In a district like U46, it's to their benefit.
They have more
to be
options.
able to have more
They have a lot
options.
more options.
Do we feel comfortable going around the table and saying how we each would vote on this?
Keeping in mind that at the elementary K-8 level, our students don't have that
Right.
foreign language
Right.
requirement in any case, that international language, right? So it's really for high schools.
And in addition to that, it's really just to allow those districts that kind of have this expansive opportunity, the ability to flex that way. We don't, right?
Correct,
But,
correct,
you know.
correct.
So a yes is do adopt and no is do not adopt. Should I start at the other end of the table? Or?
Start with you.
Okay. I will say yes.
I'm also a yes. I just think it gives them extra flexibility without requiring that they do anything in case there's be a certain hardship situation or any other situation that we think of.
Okay.
I'm a no for the reasons I stated.
Yeah. Okay. That gives us 4 yes for our D46 vote for that. All right, the next resolution is about authorized charter school funding. It's urging the adoption of an evidence-based funding formula that aligns with the funding formula used for every other public school in the state of Illinois. Currently, there's a different type of formula that's used for funding state-authorized charter schools that's based on the school district's average per pupil expenditure amount. And an EBF approach would be based on the needs of the students enrolled in the state-authorized charter school. So the resolutions committee analysis is saying that an EBF type formula would be more equitable. Any?
So essentially bringing charter schools under the same methodology that's used for the public schools.
That's what it seems like, yeah.
Works for me.
Okay.
I'm a yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes, okay, great. I'm just gonna say, yeah. All right, the next one, number 3, so I'm on page 11, is about tax increment financing accountability. Basically saying we need some TIF reform and really advocate for this, please, IASB. This seems kind of like a no-brainer to
Yep,
us, but.
agree.
Okay, so yes, all the way across, okay. All right, the next one is it's about Faith's Law, a centralized state agency for employment history reviews. I would actually be curious what your thoughts are on this. This came up last year.
Yeah, I
It
thought
did,
so.
with the implementation of Faith's Law. Anybody that was hired after July 1st of '23, we had to go back and do EHRs on employment history reviews on all of those people that have come to our district since then. We went with a program that helped with that, and so each district's now responsible for sending out a form. So Dr. Glickman comes to our district as a new hire. We have to send a letter out to, an EHR out to East Main, Kildare, Wheeling, and all those districts have to respond with, yeah. And any place that she worked where she was responsible for children. So if you worked at a park district or if you worked at a daycare. And in Faith's Law, and the EHRs completely agree with them. It checks for sexual misconduct. Completely agree with it, but the state implemented it with no plan. And so it put all of the onus on the districts to do those, as if we had a central organization that did this, they could warehouse all of this information. And so instead of having to send out letters constantly to these people, these other districts, we could go and check from that database. So yes, we support that.
Yes.
That's what I was thinking,
Yeah.
okay. So another solid yes across for us. All right, the next one is about healthcare coverage. It's kind of similar in that supporting changes that require the Illinois Department of Central Management Services to create a unified health plan for school districts to opt into. The district rationale of the proposing district mentioned that it might be similar to universities. Large universities in the state can join together, and thus larger numbers bring the risk down and the cost of insurance down. I'd be curious what your thoughts are on this one. And yours, yeah. Since we know the costs of benefits
They're
have really
significant,
increased
yeah.
significantly, especially for our district.
I think it would be a good option for us to, if it was created, we're obviously we're within the employee benefits cooperative already. We procure all our benefits through Blue Cross Blue Shield and all the other things that that we provide through dental and vision. But it would be great to have another option that we could compare that to. And if it became large enough and it was sustainable and it became something which was a viable option, yes, we'd definitely look at that. Because healthcare costs have been a big drain on the district for a long time.
Does anybody need more time to think about this one, or?
I don't think so.
Pretty much a solid yes again, okay. The last one is about, or the sixth one is about polling places, saying, it's amending a prior position statement, saying that school districts should not, so what they want to add to this amendment is that school districts should not be mandated to close on election day if none of the buildings used by students within the district serve as polling places. And
Well, that presupposes the reason that they are mandated to close now is because of a risk to students. But if there's no students, I mean, no voters at the school, then.
And that is
no
the
risk.
reason why, yeah.
But if it is a polling location, then the mandate would stay.
Right.
Yeah, the,
district
the,
Mhm.
the existing resolution or position statement says IASB shall support legislation that amends election code to allow a school district to refuse to be used as a polling place. But if it's not being used as a polling place, this extra sentence says they're not forced to close if the building's not being used as a polling place. I guess another, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I get the part of, like not being mandated to close if you're not a polling location. I guess, would it being bundled with the ability to option out of being a polling location? I guess I don't understand why would you option out of that?
So have you been old school that day?
Yeah,
I mean, so it was, what's the genesis? How do we get to the point?
Do you want to, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think the only change that is being recommended in here is school districts should not be mandated to close on election day if none of the buildings used by students within the district serve as polling places. The rest of it is not being recommended to change. It already exists.
It's already a position
Right.
statement that our association has.
It was adopted in 2007 and amended in 2009.
I'm okay with it.
Okay. All right, now we move on to the trickier section in a way. The last resolutions that we're going to talk about all received a do not adopt recommendation from the IASB Resolutions Committee. The proposing districts there were a few proposing districts that appealed in time. So that means that 3 of these do not adopt recommendation proposals, if they get a 2/3 majority vote on the day of the delegate assembly, they will be reconsidered. And then if they are reconsidered, if they meet that 2/3 majority vote, then we'll discuss in that delegate assembly whether or not they should be adopted. So I need direction from our board as to whether we would, A, reconsider, and B, if it's reconsidered, should it be adopted or not? So the first one is about cell phone usage. This one was appealed by the proposing district. And this one is requesting that the Illinois legislature consider legislation that empowers school boards to adopt policy regarding the use of student-owned wireless communications devices. The rationale of the resolutions committee that said do not adopt said that there's already a policy that is available to districts, and that school boards have the flexibility to create a cell phone usage policy specific to their district's needs, much like
Which
what
we've
we
done,
did.
yeah, which you've done.
The committee did not support a statewide mandate and wanted to leave it to local governance, so.
Somewhat moved by that position, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mandate is a nasty word sometimes in education, and it's probably best left to local governments, I think.
I would agree.
That's where I sit too. You, Jim, you okay with that? Okay.
So then we would maintain the do not adopt, right?
Yeah, and we would say, let's see, if it comes up, we don't support
don't, right.
even reconsidering it.
Right.
So, okay. So, No and no. Okay. The next one is Office of Inspector General. This proposal is encouraging legislation that will develop a state-funded Office of Inspector General to investigate waste, fraud, financial mismanagement, et cetera, et cetera. The rationale by the committee, well, it's quite lengthy. I don't know if you had a chance to read it before tonight. The examples that the proposing district gave were that several state and large school districts already have an established Office of Inspector General. Their examples were Los Angeles, Detroit, Philadelphia, and the state of Florida. The analysis by the Resolutions Committee said that while committee members agree that oversight and accountability is of utmost importance, there are already legal remedies that exist to hold school districts accountable, and that the expansion and creation of a new agency is not necessary. Yeah, that's what I take it as. Yeah. I don't know if, I mean, if I'm just playing devil's advocate here, if it did exist, would it lessen the workload for someone like you? I don't know.
So the audit that we do each year is not designed to detect fraud. It's actually designed to present, I think the term is, the statement's free of material misstatement, which is kind of a high level. So the Baker Tilly is not looking for fraud. If they find fraud, they're going to report it to you as the audit committee, but they're not actively looking for it as part of the actual audit. School districts would have to engage with a specific CPA firm that would do a forensic audit, which would be a different engagement. We're talking about a very specific form of audit. So if the board wants a level of due diligence that's at that level, you would specifically go out and seek an engagement for a separate auditor or the same auditor to do that work. No, we do. We do have, so maybe I'm not saying this correctly. A CPA audit is not looking for fraud, but as part of their due diligence in doing their testing, if fraud is found, they would report it to the audit committee. But they are not engaged to look for fraud. That's kind of them disclaiming it. So if a school district wants to have a higher level of due diligence beyond what is state mandated, which is a CPA audit, free of material misstatement, which is the actual phrase, you would have to engage with an auditor to do a forensic audit. That's kind of what the difference between a CPA audit annually presented and what this is doing, which is specifically looking for waste and fraud. You please ask my auditors when they're here in the audit committee, because they'll talk for 5 hours about what they do. But it's a different thing.
It would show up. It would.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's the audit committee function, yeah.
And more mundanely, right, I mean, just routine processes like bank account reconciliation would detect fraud as well. Separation of duties, someone who enters a payable can't be the one to write and sign a check. Those kinds of things are already in place.
So we feel there are enough checks and balances already, and we would.
I mean, talk about waste, it'd be engaging in your people's time, not just, I mean, and there's more, the scope is bigger than just financial as well. It has other aspects of scope that seem to me to be burdensome and maybe perhaps inefficient on a district and its resources.
Yeah, that's a double no, yeah. So the next one, we don't even have to discuss. It did not move forward. It was not appealed. That was a Faith's Law one. The 10th one, criminal background check, has been appealed. So let me refresh my memory. This is requiring all school board, this resolution proposal is saying we think all school board candidates should have a criminal background check before they submit their petition, and that it would be each candidate's responsibility to get a criminal background check from the Regional Office of Education. The district rationale of the proposing district said there's a current law that states that no school board member can be convicted of an infamous crime. However, there's no oversight that is making sure that is completed. The committee analysis said, while it's agreed that school board members maintain the highest ethical standards, they think that requiring school board candidates to get their own background checks would be creating a different election standard as compared to other elected officials, and it could cause a financial and procedural challenge for potential school board members. Any thoughts on this one?
I agree.
Jim? Okay. I just. Oh, another, okay. Okay, so I'll mark us as a double no on this one too. And then I think that's it. Yes, because the other things were do not present. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was
Good.
nice and easy.
Thank you, Mrs. Albert, and thank you for serving as delegate. Yep. Okay, that brings us to topics for future agenda items.
Yep, I have a few to share. The November 20th board meeting will begin with a finance committee meeting at 5 o'clock. That is the presentation of the audit. So Baker Tilly will be here to share information about the audit. Also 5-year projections and an update regarding abatements. Is that correct? Okay, so that's the Finance Committee meeting at 5. Then when we come into our regular meeting at 6 o'clock, we'll have our GMS students with us, just like we had our park students with us this evening. They were awesome. It's going to be a heavy finance committee, finance evening, so I will do all I can to prep our GMS students for that. There'll be a truth and taxation hearing. Baker Tilly will have presented the audit results in the Finance Committee meeting, but then that will be discussed at the regular board meeting, the audit results and AFR approval. And there's also discussion about the purchasing of chillers and boilers at GMS, Frederick, and Prairie View. That'll be that evening, yeah. Is that a discussion item? Or is that a... Well, let me ask you, board. I know where you're going with this. Board, is it okay if that is presented to you as an action item rather than discussion?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
We have discussed it in a lot of ways, so, okay, so that'll be action, that'll be great. We're also that evening going to be having a discussion on student fees. Now, board, I'm not sure that you have discussed student fees as early as November in the past. Usually it's kind of a post-winter break conversation. We're bringing it to you earlier this year because it's our intention to open up student registration earlier this upcoming school year, or for the next school year, so that we can plan accordingly. And so in order to open up registration sooner, we have to know what our student fees are. So we're planning to bring that discussion to you in November. Also that evening, we are returning to the sustainability resolution, and I believe that's also an action item. And also, November is Board Appreciation Month, so we might have a little something, there's cake. Yes. So our GMS students will sit through a lot of finance, but they'll get cake.
Piece of cake.
There it is. So that's November 20th. In December, we have we have 2 board meetings in December, but, correct? No,
No, one, 'cause-
you know what? There's a change that has to happen on my calendar, yeah. December 11th, the student fees will come back to you with an action. Also, Dr. Lorenzo that evening is going to do an update regarding the DMG Opportunity Review. So that's the Student Services Opportunity Review that we did last year. We came to you in the spring and let you know what the work was ahead, and we're going to do an update for you regarding that work. In January, on January 15th, as I mentioned earlier, Amy Gluck will do a student data review for you. We'll also be bringing our architects and engineers from Wold to come back to do that media center enhancements update that we talked about a little while ago. And then that January is where we have a second meeting, January 29th. So from January 29th through throughout the spring, I'll just simply mention that we have GMS and Park Campus coming back each a couple of times, and I'm going to zoom all the way to May. Wow. May 14th, GMS will be here, and we're going to be doing an arts overview. And I just wanted to let you know that, board, since that was discussed a little bit at our last board meeting, there was a request to bring information about arts in our school district. We're going to do that in May. So that's what I have for upcoming meetings. Lots in between, of course.
Very good.
We put somewhere on in the future, probably January, early February, discussion regarding vetting superintendent search services.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, I'll put that in here, and we can figure out whether you're having a group discussion, whether you're bringing some people in to talk to them, what you're doing next.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Public comments, do we have any more public comments from the public? Thank you for attending this evening. That brings us to the close of this meeting. We do have a closed session tonight, so I need a motion to go into closed session, and I have to read this. We don't anticipate any new business coming out of the closed session, so once we are done with that, we will adjourn directly from there. But I need a motion to go into closed session in accordance with Public Act 5 Illinois CS 120, paragraph 2. The appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity, and accordance with Public Act 5 Illinois CS 120, paragraph 2, C2, collective negotiation matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. I need a motion to go into closed session for those 2 items.
I'll second.
Okay?
LaCroy,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Okay, thank you everybody for attending, and enjoy the rest of your evening.